Good afternoon. I'm Doc Rosenthal from DKS in sunny Portland, Oregon. And I'm going to talk about how you can implement the NCHRP 765 post-processing procedure in Visum rather than using a spreadsheet. There's a built-in tool as well, but it's kind of more comprehensive than that. The biggest benefit of the procedure in Visum is using the graphic parameter tools. The calculations are kind of trivial, but having the power to look at the link and turn inputs in a graphic network is really powerful for deliverables. So let's get started. Just a quick refresher, if anybody hasn't done post-processing in a minute. Implementation of the NCHRP report 765, formerly 255. Essentially, it's just evaluating a few different growth calculations, the difference, the ratio, the modified ratio, and the average. The difference and the ratio are pretty self-explanatory, and then the modified and the average are just combinations of those. There are decision criteria also built into the process to figure out which growth method you should use, and you ultimately get forecasted link volumes that you can turn into future turn volumes. So here's a quick run through of our spreadsheet that we use at DKS when we have to. There's a couple tabs to key in on, the model volume tab and the link growth tab, and then the final turn volume tab. Those are the ones we're going to go over. There are definitely applications where the spreadsheet is still the best tool to use, but I think hopefully I can convince you that Visum is the way to go. So first step, putting in your model node information to look up your link volumes, right? So you're already transferring information from Visum or another regional modeling tool into the spreadsheet. Hopefully you don't mix up your ones and your twos and you miss a high volume movement that you have to go back and check later. And hopefully your future model is the same network as your base model, otherwise you have to do this process twice. There's just a lot of opportunities for typos and errors in there. So after that, you get your link growth here. This is the way we set it up, the in and outbound links. So you're showing your growth. And essentially, you just have this giant table of numbers that you can use conditional formatting to help review and see where your high or low growth areas are. But essentially, you just have to manually track that. And I mean, if you have 20 or 30 intersections, that can be pretty tedious. And then, so you've got your growth, everything was right, you didn't have any typos, and then you have to balance your network. And this is the way we have it in the spreadsheet. I don't even use this tab, it's painful to me. You have your east and westbound movements, you could do north and southbound, but then you're just extrapolating, you have this giant sheet that you're trying to go back and forth and make your adjustments and track them. So a little better example that Randy had from his PTV days. This is kind of getting towards that Visum graphic network where you can kind of see where your movements are going and how you're tracking your balancing adjustments. So this is a little better way to balance. So spreadsheet works if you have a small number of intersections. It's good when you don't have a network, you don't need to worry about balancing, but you're kind of limited with your functionality. It's hard to actually display the results well. And the workflow is kind of tedious, flipping back and forth. So, in Visum, you already have your assignment in there, hopefully. Maybe you need to do a sub-area network from another regional model, but you just save your assignment in your link attributes. So you have your base year and your future year. And we have a count year interpolation formula attribute. You just put in the interpolation factor and it'll calculate your count year. So there you're off and running already. I mean, you don't have to do any of the lookup from the node table. Verifying your assignment is correct, but you already have your model volumes there. At the turn level, you have the counts, an adjustment, and a final balance count. And this is probably, if you didn't do anything else, this is the place where you can really have some benefits when you're doing post-processing in Visum. So you can track those adjustments through your network, which I'll show on the next slide. But you can also bring in the counts easily with a lookup on the orientation, and you have a study ID for your node number. So you can quickly get that data into Visum from your count sheets. So here we're displaying the imbalance at this node. I think there's probably a pedestrian connection in the regional model that just got brought over. So I have the sum of the in and the out turns displayed on the link, and that's the raw count value. So then you just go to your quick view, and you have the AM balance adjustment there, that blank one in the middle, and you put in 43, and voila, it's balanced. So this is just a small example, but hopefully you can imagine when you're going from a big OD pair across a whole model, you can quickly just kind of trace that adjustment through, and you don't have to spend a bunch of time making sure that your row is in the correct place in your spreadsheet, and maybe your intersections aren't aligned in the right way. So having that information in Visum is really powerful. The growth is automatically calculated. We have formula attributes that set up for the average, the difference, the ratio, and the modified, and the decision criteria. So essentially, once you get your model volumes in the network, you're done with your NCHRP process. And this is also related to the 255 procedure that's already in Visum. If you want to run that procedure sequence, that's another way. But saving the formula attributes in a network file and then just reading them in is pretty easy, and then you already have that information comprehensively. You don't have to run the procedure sequence for each growth type. So with the final turns, there's a lot displayed here. Probably wouldn't want to look at all of this at once when you're doing it, but just for the purposes of the presentation. We have the forecasted turn, any adjustment at the future turn level, your final turn, and then I also have the growth ratio shown in here, which when I'm going through, it's really helpful to just be able to track where I have positive or negative growth. If I need to make a balancing adjustment, I might just dump that onto a place where I was showing no growth. And yeah, using the conditional display, you can also show the above and below one, right? So the red turn there for that, what is that, eastbound left. And you can also show the orientation too, So the steps. You generate a sub-area network, or you build a Visum stick network. You add in your counted turns, just with a simple lookup from your count sheet. You run and save your assignments, if needed, unless you already have it there. And then you balance your forecasted turn volumes, right? So just pushing those adjustments through if needed. And then finally, verify results, which is what we're going to talk about right now. So if you're reviewing one of these networks, reviewing the forecasted turns in the spreadsheet, we kind of talked about that a little bit, but it's pretty limited, right? You kind of are stuck with your final turn. That's what you've got. But here you can see the adjustments that were made by the analyst, whoever was doing it. Display the turn adjustments. You have a comment field to justify the adjustment, and then you see the final growth and the growth ratio. And you could use a list view too to display these and filter by certain settings to get the information that you were trying to pull out of the network. And then this is my second favorite piece after the balancing, having the regional model comparison. Unfortunately, this regional model was in M, not in Visum. So, but the Visum side is on your right. And here you can really track how you've used the post-processing procedure to develop your future turn volumes, and then kind of have that extra level of justification when you're providing your deliverable here. So we're showing the same decrease along, in this case is Barber Boulevard, if you know Portland, and then we have the increase on the other part of the network. So it's also just a good way to kind of quickly QC your results and see. So this table is at the turn level. So you see the study ID node, the orientation, and then just all of the different attributes that we're using for the post-processing, the count, the initial turn, the NCHRP turns, and then any adjustments. So in this case, I filtered to show all the turns where we're decreasing, right? So that's just an easy check to do with the filters at the list level. And just check and make sure that, where you're decreasing in the future, you have a reasonable justification for that. And then now, so getting into deliverables, again, comparing to what you would get out of the spreadsheet, you're really just a list of turns. Maybe you provide your growth. But here you can have a difference plot of your post-process network. You can do a link growth table. So this is showing the calculations that are done in the model. And then this one, another attribute, right, combining the orientation and the final turn and showing those turns in the network, because sometimes it's difficult to kind of parse your way through a table and understand those. So with everything in a Visum model, then you can feed it directly into any ODME that you're doing for Visum route development. And the new route import feature is awesome. I don't know who requested that one over many years, but that's a great feature. And then you have a framework that's consistent across multiple scenarios. So if you do, a couple build scenarios, then you have your same balancing adjustments you can quickly copy between. And you don't have to worry about, accidentally balancing a left turn that was 500 versus, a through movement. So yeah, hopefully you're convinced. Pretty easy to implement. And yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to contact me.